All right. So I got a little quiz for you. On the top, what do you see? What kind of connector is that? How's that called? So, and what's the thing below that? And together that's? Louder? Lightning talks, yeah, right. So you'll have to do a bit better because we need some involvement of the auditorium here during the lightning talks. I'll explain why. So the lightning talks, the first session today on day 2. Lightning talks are basically short talks that each Congress participant may give if you register for one soon enough. And you basically get 5 minutes to tell something about a project you're doing or tell us about your assembly or something. And sometimes you also have 3 minutes, but these are only some of the talks. To make sure that every talker uses his 5 minutes, his or her 5 minutes, we have the timekeeper, this nifty device by Alex. We'll give a short demonstration. So, would you like to say something about your...
Yes, this device should make sure that the lightning talks are really lightning fast. Last year we got complaints, you shouldn't hurry people so much, give them more time. And I don't think this is the spirit of the lightning talks, you know? The spirit of the lightning talks is to make things fast, to make things enjoyable, to get your concepts to the core and to entertain your audience. And therefore, we will keep the time with this timekeeper. And when I start this, you see a green LED column rising up. Where in the first 4 minutes, you have 5 minutes after all. In the first 4 minutes, everything is green. Then the column will be rising this way, maybe not that fast. This is a demo mode. And when 4 minutes are up, everything, the green light will be on top. And when the green light is on top, this means you have about 1 minute left.
Yeah.
This is the time when you have 1 minute left.
And then it starts with yellow.
In the next 30 seconds, everything is going to be yellow. And when you have 30 seconds left, the red column starts to rise. And this means you should come to an end. And now you have about 20 seconds. And when it's about this way, we will do this sign with both hands. That means you have 10 seconds. And then it's your part. Can we have a little bit of training?
Yeah, we will practice
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Marvelous. I don't think we need to train this again.
I think it works.
Yeah.
So everybody knows what to do. Wait, the speakers don't know what to do. So if you're a speaker and you forgot your time slot, you can still check it on the Mirror wiki, because that one isn't down. So for day 2, there's the list with all the talkers. And if you know when your time slot is, you should, before the talk in front of you, you should go to the front row and wait there, then get up as soon as you see your slides coming up. Come up here where I'm standing, take this clicker from the previous talker. Don't let the previous talker run away with this, because it's mine. And then just talk into the microphone. That's also very important. You can see your slides down on this monitor. You don't have to turn around and you see what happens. If you turn around to look at the slides up there, then most of the time you can't understand me, because I'm too far away from the microphone. So please just talk into the microphone, look into the crowd or look onto the monitor, and just click left, right for the slides. Then one final announcement, there's also translation available. All the English talks will be translated into German, and the German talks will be translated into English on the usual number, decked 8014 for Saal G. That's it. Let's have a great session and start right away.
Hello everyone, and it's really awful we have to talk about configuration management. If you don't know it, that means that you have some form I'll throw this away apparently, that you have some form of text file or code file that documents the state of your system's configuration. And that's really great. When you have thousands of servers, you can have all of them in the same state and there's no confusion around there. And of course, the tools that exist for configuration management are optimized for these huge systems, so they become huge systems themselves. This is, for example, from the documentation for Chef. I didn't find a diagram that shows all of their concepts. It's like 46 on this introduction page. It's really awful. Maybe some iteration of Conway's Law. And my use case is quite small. I have my notebook and I want to document the configuration. I want to know how I set up the palm detection years ago. So I want some kind of minimalistic configuration management. Does it click? Hello. Yeah. And my idea was to use the package manager. We have all we need in there. We can just build a configuration package and ship the configuration files as part of that package and install all the applications that we need as dependencies to that package. So I just install that package during setup time and everything is configured automatically. If I have anything else I want to set up, like users or groups, I can use this post-install scripts that most package managers support. But of course, there are some limitations to this. For example, when someone changes stuff afterwards, I cannot simply rerun this post-install script. It's hidden inside the package. And the file, if I want to install a configuration file, like in this diagram, I might get a conflict when the application has a default configuration shipped in its package. So there are some problems with that approach. And we can solve all these, and that's what Holo does. What I've been working on the last few months and what I'm also using productively on my systems. For example, this file conflict is really easy to resolve. We just drop the default configuration and install our custom configuration. That's an easy part. For example, we can also ship a script with the configuration package that modifies this default configuration. So if the application developers later choose to change the default configuration, we automatically benefit from this. We can just run holo apply again when this happens. And I can also provision any other kinds of entities by putting a source file into the configuration package that is then also processed with holo apply. And now I have my source file, so there is some source of truth about how the system is configured. So if someone changes it later on, for example, here I changed my SSHD config, and that's bad, but I can detect it with holodiff, and I can apply some -- force to fix this later on. And that's the end already. Here are some links for you to check this out. And I also listed some contribution opportunities. If you like, you can build packages for Holo. I did packages for Arch Linux, since that's what I'm using. But if you are using another distribution, I would really like you to build packages and use Holo for yourself. And also there is a plugin system available, so you can teach Holo to provision new kinds of stuff, for example, databases or whatever you want. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. So this talk is going to involve some hardware demo.
Hi, I'm Swolly and I code demos. I've brought with me today something which I call a demo blaster. That's just a ghetto blaster for playing demos, self-coded stuff. And the clicker isn't working. Slide, could you do slide, please? Clicker isn't working. Ah, no, it's. So, slide, please.
You're probably pressing the wrong key. Nope, that's right. That's weird. Someone, okay. Yeah, let's, I'll just, oh, it does work, but maybe this one slide is too slow because the photo is too, no. Okay, yeah, I'll just say slide, please.
Okay. But please reset the timer.
I'll exchange the batteries right away.
Okay, slide, please. So this whole project started with a failure. I wanted to build something with LEDs and used LED stripes with a connection board for Raspberry Pi or an Arduino. Neither worked, though the LEDs were okay, that had been proven. I wasted a couple of days and threw this whole stuff away once the next approach worked. Slide, please. The hardware is, this is the next approach, the hardware is a translucent briefcase. I bought it on eBay. The manufacturer itself is specialized in creating blister wrappings, which was a bit odd for me. Slide, please. We've got 32 by 16 LEDs, so I've got half a K of LEDs. The grid that separates the color is done by a CNC milling cutter, and the wood was taken from the backside of an old closet which I had in my basement. Slide, please. The whole LEDs are driven by a so-called Fade Candy microcontroller. This is a TNC3 based designs with just the output pins soldered differently. Slide, please. The whole stuff then is connected to a Raspberry Pi 2 that drives the animation. Slide, please. I've got for the sound a pair of standard USB speakers or USB powered speakers for a laptop or a PC, stuff like that. Slide, please. And for debugging or working on the hardware, I've got extended the USB port and HDMI port and the LAN port. So I could use something like the laptop for connecting the stuff using as a remote console. Slide, please. And I've got a huge power supply is needed, so there's no solution for using batteries right now. Slide, please. And I've included a minion, just because they are cute, I like them. Slide, please. The software is also almost also available. I'm using the Fade Candy server. This is a GitHub project. I've slightly modified the official Open Pixel Control protocol library so that I could use a different graphics library for sending my data. There are also client libraries available for C++, Python, Perl. The protocol is really simple. You can do it in anything that can write binary data over TCP/IP. Slide, please. So how do they get the stuff done? We've got the LEDs with their proprietary bus. Slide, please. They are connected to the Fade Candy microcontroller, which in itself provides USB. Yes, slide, please, thanks. This is connected to the Fade Candy server. This is connected via TCP/IP to, slide, please, my client application. The client application in itself is also done by off-the-shelf components. Only the green parts. This is something that I've needed to code myself. Everything else is out of the box. It's already working. So slide, please. And the fun part about it, since it's TCP/IP, you can also do it from a development machine. You don't have to do it on the Raspberry Pi 2. You can use your normal notebook for development and don't have to go for the embedded system. Slide, please. So my conclusion, building this stuff is done using out-of-the-shelf component. There almost no soldering. I needed only to solder the power supply. All of the stuff is just putting stuff together. It's working perfectly. The complete software stack is available. And since Fade Candy is a USB device, you can connect it to almost anything. There are also already binaries available for Mac OS X, Windows, and source code is available. You can put it in anything that can compile something for Linux will work. And two small hints from myself now. Don't drive the LEDs up to the maximum. What you see right now is about 50%, because they tend to break if you really drive them up to the limit. In my case, I think it's because they are getting heat and this breaks them. And for software hints, if you want to do nice animations, use oversampling. So create a picture that's something like 4 times as big and then scale it down just right before you want to display it. And for an impression, use movement. Yeah. And if you want to see demos, you can visit us tonight at 2200 in Hall F. Then we are going to do 2 hours of demos, showing demos. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I'm terribly sorry about the clicker right now. It seems to have been the batteries. Yeah, okay. Can you put up the slides, please?
Das ist aber schon sehr weit. Nochmal erste Folie. Ah.
Let's go.
Ja, Überwachung. Mehr Überwachung brauchen wir. Hören wir mal auf die großen Politiker, die uns versichern, in der Überwachung liegt unser aller Heil. Keine Angst mehr vor Terroranschlägen, keine Kriminalität mehr. Vor uns liegt eine wahrhaft tugendhafte Gesellschaft aus ehrlichen, anständigen Menschen, die sich stets an Recht und Gesetz halten. Nur noch treue Eheleute, kein Aufruhr mehr von irgendwelchen Benachteiligten. Noch bevor sich irgendwelcher Protest formiert, sind schon alle Rädelsführer verhaftet. Das heißt, zufriedene, begnügsame Empfänger von Hartz IV, selbst wenn wir den Satz halbieren. Und wenn wir wieder einmal Krieg führen müssen gegen die Feinde der überwachten Freiheit, wenn wir wieder einmal in fernen, ölreichen Ländern unsere Werte verteidigen müssen, dann können wir sicher sein, dass es zu Hause nicht zu gefährlichen, dolchstoßartigen Friedensdemonstrationen kommen wird. Ja, liebe Freunde, es ist jetzt die Zeit, in der sich entscheidet, ob wir zukünftig noch in einer Demokratie leben werden oder unter einem Geheimdienstregime. Momentan wird jeder Terroranschlag als Anlass genommen, den unkontrollierbaren Geheimdiensten noch weitergehende Befugnisse zuzugeben. In Deutschland gibt es sogar schon eine gesetzlich zugesicherte Straffreiheit für Verbrechen vom Inlandsgeheimdienst, natürlich nur zu unserer Sicherheit. Und mit der Vorratsdatenspeicherung wird das Überwachungsarsenal weiter ausgebaut und es wird immer einfacher, Oppositionsbewegungen zu unterdrücken und Whistleblower rechtzeitig aus dem Verkehr zu ziehen, noch bevor sie ihren Skandal an die Öffentlichkeit gebracht haben. Überwachung ist unvereinbar mit Volkssouveränität und zerstört das Fundament der Demokratie. Unsere Verfassung sieht zum Glück noch eine letzte Instanz vor, die uns vor dieser Entwicklung schützen kann. Diese Instanz ist die mächtigste überhaupt. Das Problem ist, sie ist unheimlich träge und schwerfällig. Und ihr wisst schon, von was ich spreche. Die Instanz, die ist unser Hintern. Und den gilt es jetzt hochzukriegen. Und für eine starke öffentliche Meinung gegen Überwachung zu sorgen. Und das ist auch das Anliegen der Plattform gegen Überwachung. Die Plattform ist eine Website, die soll mithelfen, die Bewegung gegen Überwachung zu vernetzen, stärker zu machen und diesen Unmut der schweigenden Mehrheit zu transformieren in öffentlich wahrnehmbaren Protest. Und dafür enthält die Plattform gegen Überwachung eine Liste von lokalen Gruppen, die sich gegen Überwachung engagieren. Und wer sich auch engagieren möchte, der findet über diese Landkarte eine Gruppe in seiner Nähe, wo er sich anschließen kann und mithelfen kann. Und ihr seht schon, es gibt große Flächen, die noch unbesetzt sind. Deswegen mein Appell an jeden von euch, wo auch immer ihr hierher kommt, wo es noch keine lokale Gruppe gibt, tragt euch ein in diese Liste, auch wenn ihr allein seid, tragt eine Gruppe in Gründung und dann finden euch andere in der Region, die auch mitarbeiten wollen und dann könnt ihr gemeinsam Größeres auf die Beine stellen. Das kann ganz einfach losgehen mit einem Infostand oder einem Vortrag, den ihr organisiert oder eine Aktion, eine kreative oder eine Demonstration. Was auch immer ihr vorhabt, was ihr als geeignet betrachtet, das Thema in die Öffentlichkeit zu bringen, veranstaltet es und tragt es ein in den Kalender gegen Überwachung, auch auf dieser Plattform. Da stehen sämtliche Veranstaltungen, die sich zum Thema Überwachung richten und wo ihr dann mithelfen könnt, wo ihr die Veranstaltungen verbreiten könnt und Werbung machen könnt. Ja, und wem das alles viel zu aufwendig ist, für den gibt es noch das Logo gegen Überwachung, das könnt ihr dann auf der Website platzieren oder als Aufkleber auf irgendeinem Fenster und damit einen, wenn auch kleinen, Beitrag zur öffentlichen Meinungsbildung leisten. Ich werde die Website weiterentwickeln, nach und nach, und freue mich über Anregungen, Kritik oder Mithilfe. Vielen Dank.
Vielen Dank. Okay, next talk, please. Verlötet. Oh, okay, there's the speaker.
So for the following speakers, if you see that the speaker before you is coming to an end or during his talk, please come to the podium so we can switch quickly.
Go ahead.
Okay, hi, I'm Sebastian, and I'm going to talk about fair hardware. In order to explain what fair hardware is, I'm specifically going to talk about tin. Tin is a metal that is in every electronics product because we need it in order to stick electronic components together. So why should I be talking about tin? Okay, where do I need to point this?
Do we have clicker problems again? Could also be that your slides have very high resolution images, so it takes a while for my slow ThinkPad to,
okay,
yeah.
Okay. There are a number of problems with tin mining. One of them is that a lot of it is conducted informally, which basically means that people dig the tin out of the ground by themselves. That doesn't really provide them with a stable income, but it also leads to other related problems such as child labor, or frequent injuries or even death because of the lack of safety measures. Additionally, as another problem, mining is frequently environmentally devastating and leaves behind moon landscapes such as this, where it takes decades in order to be able to grow anything again. So this is kind of a dirty but open secret of our own gated community here, that all of the hardware that we love to play with is affected by social problems such as the one I just sketched out. So what should we do about it? Well, I'm here representing a small non-profit called Verlötet, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about how we got started. So one day last year, we found ourselves brainstorming with another person who had a fair hardware project, who was making a fair computer mouse, in order to find out what a good project would be to start. And she said that tin was kind of a blind spot in her own supply chain. So we thought, well, it shouldn't be too hard to swap it out for recycled tin in order to break this link to these destructive mining conditions. So the first thing we did was choose a catchy name, of course, and we told the world, okay, we're going to do this. And that was good because it also helped us to get press coverage very early on. And that in turn helped us to get into contact with a large maker of soldering products. Okay, press coverage, soldering products. So over a year we talked back and forth with them. You know, what does the word fair mean to us? What technical possibilities are there? And 1 year later, ta-da, here we have our first recycled soldering wire, which is camera shy. I'm not telling you this to brag about it. Here it is. I'm not telling you this to brag about it, but I want to share this lesson that we learned in the process, which is even though the state of the electronic industry as a whole is pretty bad when it comes to labor and human rights issues and so on, there are lots of companies, usually not the huge companies involved, who actually have a conscience and who want to be on the right side, and who recognize that they're responsible for what is in the supply chain. So it might be enough to basically plant this idea into their head that they should care more about where their resources come from, for example. And they might go a long part of the way on their own. So here's something I would like more people here to do. One is talk to some company and get them on the right side. Maybe you just need to talk to them and they'll sort of see the value. If you work at such a company, why not start an initiative in your company? If you make hardware, try to document your supply chain, find out what is in there, what processing steps, what resources, and let people know, because transparency is always the first step. If this got you interested, we would like to meet you. We're organizing a meetup. Can I have the next slide, please? We're organizing a meetup tomorrow at 3:15. Can I have the slide, please?
Yeah, it should come if you press the
thanks.
button.
Okay, so we're organizing a meetup tomorrow at 3:15 at our assembly between the NOC help desk and the Sendezentrum. So meet us there any other time, contact us electronically. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so some of the talks seem to progress rather slow. That's usually the case with PDFs that are like 10 MB plus, because there are such high resolution images in there that, I don't know, my ThinkPad is too slow for this. Okay, next talk, please.
Hello everyone. I would like to present a project that is the outcome of my PhD research on patents and makers. It's a proposal of a new legal framework, a solution that would free makers and making from blocking effects of patents. On its implementation, I work with a friend, Paweł Alex Holnacki, who helps me with technical aspects. And with my talk, I would like to encourage you to support us with your ideas and knowledge. For time limits, I don't have much time to talk about all critical points of the patent system, but I would like to highlight one very important, in my opinion, for makers. It's called, well, I call it over-patentization. Patenting nowadays follow paradigm, the more the better. The more patents in your portfolio, the better for your business strategies. That leads to a situation that more and more technology fields are packed with patents, and it makes very troublesome for an individual to find out whether he or she makes own patented components. A good illustration of the situation is a smartphone, as estimated by Samsung lawyers in the notorious battle Samsung versus Apple. They estimated that one smartphone covers 250,000 patents. So automatically you may ask yourself about the quality of such patented solutions. And of course, not all patented solutions are of great quality. And interestingly enough, even big companies, for example, Google admits that their portfolios are not free from weak patents. So in this problematic context, I wanted to answer a question whether patents and patent law creates beneficial conditions for makers to make free from patent troubles. And I focused on public and non-commercial making. And as a legal object, I took under scrutiny patent exceptions. These are legal instruments that limits patent exclusivity and allows third parties to work to make own patented solutions without the authorization of the patent holder. I can imagine that majority of you heard about private and non-commercial use or experimental use. And in my research, I reached rather negative conclusion for patent and for the whole system, because current legal exceptions, patent exceptions, are insufficient and incompatible with making, and they are granted very narrow scope of application. Unfortunately, we can observe very strong pro-patent mindset, and all proposal of limiting patent exclusivity are not welcome in patent community. Nevertheless, I decided to try with my proposal. And Green Light is designed to keep public and non-commercial making free from all possible patent threats. It's intended to keep, first of all, sharing of information, instruction sharing, free from possible patent infringement and accusation of patent infringement. It's designed as a blanket solution, so you don't need to ask for a permission from a patent holder. And its Green Light framework is composed of Green Light, legal solution, and Green Base, which is now very important for the whole project. It constitutes a central point. And the Green Base not only facilitates to accumulate all makers' ideas in one central base for green light protection, but it would also help us to create a maker-driven prior art source for patent examination for patent offices. So, advantages of Green Light. First of all, makers will have free space from patents. Owners can boost their patent and portfolios with new improvements. And most importantly, I think it would be very good argument in discussion. They can also see which solutions are very easily remakeable, so they can, if they see it, they can abandon such patents and save money with this. And patent offices, they have new source of prior art. We see a lot of threats and have questions. We ask ourselves how to, what kind of form should be given to such patent. Yeah, okay. So now, if you'd like to support our project, please contact us at contact Green Light for Makers. So thank you.
Thank you. So next talk, please.
Hi, good morning. So here talking about digital stalking response protocol, which, let's see if the slides work. Yeah. I've recently been involved in 2 cases of stalking, not personally, dealing with victims of stalking cases which have had a digital element, and it's estimated that between 50 and 80% of stalking cases that there is a digital element within this. The cases I've been involved with were in 2 different EU countries, and I've also been doing research in a 3rd EU country. So what I've discovered through this is that in each of these countries, the information and the way to deal with the digital elements of stalking cases are completely different. So I kind of boiled it down into these different areas, which is the important areas: forensics, legal, police, social workers, psychologists, and victim support. Forensics is really important in the sense that obviously nobody can do anything legally in a digital stalking case without some sort of forensic element, forensic documentation of this. And who can do this varies from country to country. So, for example, in some countries you need somebody that's specifically licensed to do kind of digital forensics. In other places, in other countries, in other jurisdictions, you have people that just have to be part of an organization but have no speciality in this. They're just somebody that does kind of computer stuff and is involved in some sort of organization. So it's really difficult to find the people that can do this and to know who to look for. The legal aspect of this, there's 2 legal aspects. One is that the judiciary, the judges, magistrates and people have no idea what is going on when there's a digital element in stalking. They probably don't have much of an idea generally in any normal stalking case, but in the case when there's any kind of digital element involved, they have no idea about this. So that's one group of people that need to be reached. The other group of people that need to be reached is also people, lawyers, etc., that might be helping a victim. They also have no idea about the kind of technical aspects of the stalking case, so it's another group that needs to be reached. The police themselves, again, the police will deal with stalking cases if you can go along to them and say, under this law, under subsection this, under this element of the Computer Misuse Act, for example, in the UK, this. But the typical response that I've seen when I've been doing research in this is that, you know, if a person goes into the police station and says, here's my computer, I'm being stalked, there's this digital element. The first case I was involved with, of these cases I was talking about, was in the UK, and the police told the person to take their computer to PC World, which is a computer shop in the UK, and they would find whatever was going on with, what was the problem with it. So again, even when the police do have an interest, they also don't know how to deal with this, deal with these kind of elements. Social workers are, again, people that will deal with victims, people that are dealing with people who are coming to them in a stalking case. Again, another group of people that have no kind of background or knowledge about the technical elements that might be involved in this. But also, social workers are a really important group of people because they are the people that can do outreach, that can get information out to people that are potentially in a risk situation, etc. They're people that are in the community. They know what's going on. It's very difficult for, like, you know, geeks and stuff to get out to these to people that might be in these very isolated cases. They might be in a very isolated situation. They might be victims of abuse already. So it's a very important group of people. And again, psychologists and victim support, people that are working in this, from the cases I've been involved in and just doing research, people, once there's a digital element to a stalking thing, this is a very, very big psychological thing because you don't trust technology, you can't trust your networks, you can't trust anybody. But again, the people that are helping, trying to help you deal with this, again, they have no background in this. They have no background in networks, in digital stuff or whatever. We need to look at tools for this, and we certainly need to do a lot of awareness raising and training for all these different groups of people. This afternoon I've organised a session at 3 o'clock, which is on the first floor downstairs. And basically the idea is if anybody in this room has any knowledge about those different areas in their respective countries, if they can come along, or we can begin working on this and get kind of a knowledge base and work on some practical things, please come along to that. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Qt Pass. Where's the talker? There he comes.
So a public service announcement to all speakers. Please come in front to the stage before your talk starts.
So these are old slides because this wasn't actually my talk. I'm doing it for someone who couldn't be here. And it's about a password manager called Qt Pass. Passwords are a problem.
Please talk into the mic.
Sorry.
You can see the slides down there.
Passwords are a problem. We all probably have issues with them. So there's a nice password manager called Pass, which is in every distribution. And it lets you use GPG, Git, and Tree, and PWGen to manage your passwords. But it doesn't really work with people who aren't terminal aware. So we built a GUI for it. And this lets you use all the bits of Pass on OS X, on Linux, and on Windows, and lets you manage your passwords also in a team. We have about 20 contributors at the moment, and about 7 languages. And basically, for each set of passwords, you can decide which people can read them. So you can store your passwords in a Git repository encrypted with GPG, with a number of other folders, and in each folder you can say, I want this person to read it, I want that person to read it, these people shouldn't. And the advantage is that it uses GPG, which is something you should be probably using anyway. And we have tons of options, which are a bit complicated. So if anyone can help us with design and UX, that would be awesome. But basically, you can use Git or you cannot use Git. You can use password generation or you cannot. You can have auto clears and clipboard hiding, and you can also have templates. So if you want a consistent layout for all your passwords, then you can make sure everyone uses the same template, and then it feels like a regular password manager. That's the edit screen. It has password generation from PWGen or a password manager, a password generator of your choice. So the interesting thing was that people came with ideas like, hey, I'd like this, hey, I'd like that, and what we tried to do was to tell them, hey, well, this is how you do it. So this guy came and said, I want a new option for auto-clearing, I think it was, hiding content. So we wrote back to him, or Anian did, saying, well, this is how you'd probably do it. And the next day, he did it. So that's a nice way to engage people who are interested in your project and get them to start committing, because they can if you explain to them how to do it. It's not always that hard. It's qtpass.org. It's in Debian. It's getting into Gentoo now. We're looking for people to package it for other distributions, so if you can do that, that would be amazing. We have, I think, 7 languages, including simplified Chinese now, and we're always looking for languages. It's really easy to translate. Just come find me. I'm at the Neurohacking Assembly. That's the Debian bit. And I went way too fast. So
That's no problem. Let me just take your time to announce again that I know you're excited when you're standing up on that stage, but please try to talk into the microphone and do not turn your head around to look at the slides, because you can really trust the monitor down there. It shows exactly the same thing which is up there. So let's get ready for the next talk. NFC Gate. And go ahead, please.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Max. I was working with a few friends from Darmstadt on NFC Gate, and before we get to that, just a few basics on NFC. NFC is near field communication. It's a wireless communication standard for basically smart cards, and you have a reader, you have a smart card, you put the smart card on top of the reader, and then they do some magic and communication happens. There are also NFC chips in many Android phones, so we thought, well, that looks like a great combination. especially when we saw that with Android 4.4, NFC emulation capabilities were added to Android. So you could not only read out tags with Android, but you could also tell your phone to act like a tag. So we thought, well, that looks like a great thing where you could basically do a relay attack, if the slides load. Well, going to come up eventually. And you would have two Android devices, one smart card and one reader. And you would put one device to the smart card, one device to the reader. The two Android devices would communicate with each other. And, well, in the end, it would be a great relay attack. You could read everything, you could change the communication, and basically do a security analysis. In practice, it was, well, Android really doesn't want you to do that. It hides the functionality behind a bunch of gates, and there are also a bunch of bugs, so it was really nasty. But, well, with a lot of time, a lot of cursing, and a lot of coffee, we in the end managed to circumvent all of those problems, and yeah, managed to build our app. A quick look at two of the problems we had encountered. The first problem was that Android only supports a specific set of instructions for the emulation capabilities, which is the specific ISO standards. And many other cards use a proprietary protocol which does not conform to that standard, so you couldn't emulate it. And we ended up just patching the HCE code, so the host card emulation code, and the NFC library on the Android device using Exposed, so you can still use it on a stock Android as long as you have Exposed installed. And so we can emulate basically any NFC card, except MiFi Classic, because that's not supported, but MiFi Classic is boring because it's been broken for like 3 years. The second problem was that there is, each card has a unique identifier, and this unique identifier cannot be emulated using the stock Android features. But we found in the NFC libraries used by Broadcom chips that there is basically an undocumented function which you could call to basically set an arbitrary unique identifier and all the other values you need. So now we can emulate any unique identifier. So if your door lock uses only the unique identifier, you now have a small problem, and you should probably use a better door lock. If you want to run it, you need a device running Android 4.4 or upwards. You need at least one device with a Broadcom NFC chip, for example, a Nexus 4 or Nexus 5. The Nexus 6 has NXP apparently. You need the Exposed framework installed on that device. You also need a server to run our server application on, and you obviously need an NFC system. So why are we releasing it? It's dangerous, right? Well, Kirchhoff has something to say about using obscurity to secure your system. So please secure your system, even if people are listening to your communication or people are going to break it. So we don't feel bad about this at all. Fix your systems. So you can get the app at nfc.wtf. You can get a precompiled APK file to just install on your devices. You can get the full source code. It's licensed Apache. And yeah, have fun, break stuff, send patches. You can reach us at gate@nfc.wtf, or you can call me at Congress at the extension 6324, which stands for NFCG. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the next talk, called Impact, actually has been moved to day 4 at 14:25 because, well, I got a call 1 hour ago from the cash desk. There was a person who said, I'm supposed to give a lightning talk, but I don't have a ticket. So if you look at the lightning talk description page, there's a sentence, the first sentence actually on the page says something like, lightning talks are short talks that every Congress participant may give. So you already have to be able to get to the Congress to give this lightning talk. It does not guarantee you entrance into this building just to have a lightning talk. So that just comes with, yeah, you're here anyway and you give a lightning talk. You don't give a lightning talk to get to the Congress. So day 4, 14:25. This means we'll have to continue with another talk. I think Alex wanted to say something about that.
It's called 6FW by our Dan RL. Do I pronounce this right? Dan RL?
Yes.
Yeah, and with this talk, we try our lightning talk super fast mode. On request of the speaker, you only wanted 3 minutes. Do you still want only 3 minutes? Or do you want 4 minutes?
I try 3.
Okay, I tried 3 and we give you an additional minute if you need it. So you have 2 minutes of green and the last minute as usual.
Okay, thanks. Let me say some words about 6FW, my latest project. I evaluated small office and home office firewalls as well as enterprise equipment. It often works, but it's not scalable, it has problems, and it often does not feel right when it comes to IPv6. It's usually existing products with IPv6 added. I have some experience with IPv6. I wrote the book, I printed some stickers, but I'm still not satisfied, also not satisfied with the speed of the slide. And I have a vision. Please. Please.
You have lots of time, no problem. But can you say what you used to make the slides?
Keynote.
Oh, okay. I think I see a correlation
okay,
there.
Let me say something about the picture. This picture, I took this picture when I looked out of my living room window. This is my neighbor trying to fixing his roof. Always fun. Everything went well. Okay, I tried to remember what I wrote on the slides. My vision is to have a reliable firewall that thinks IPv6 first. I want a working, sane configuration to start with. And for example, powering up the device, get a unique local address, serve to the site and configure the firewall. As well, it's the same as you do with OpenWRT or anything else, but they use IPv4 for standard. So what I want to build is a proof of concept where we do first IPv6 and then may later add IPv4 support. I decided to use the PC Engines APU, which is very popular among open source projects. I'd like to put OpenBSD on it because it's considered very secure, and also the PF packet filter is very powerful and has Net64 built in. I want to build a web GUI or a CLI, I'm not sure yet, and I'd like to use Git as a configuration storage so that you can do easy rollbacks of configuration. I'm looking for ideas, gathering interesting people, want to improve the concept, and eventually make it happen. You can find me on the Twitters, you can write me an email, or you find me at the Assembly Non-Attached Network. Thank you.
Thanks. Nicely done in 3 minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry about the slides. So today I learned that Keynote PDF export somehow doesn't scale down the image resolution. And then Linux PDF presenters have problems rendering the images. Well, next talk would be next month. Are you here already? Yeah, nice.
Hello, my name is Daniel. I want to talk about a project which is part of my master thesis. Matthias Schulz is my supervisor for this thesis. First of all, we call this project Nexmon, and it basically enables the monitor mode for a Nexus 5 device. Yeah, the slide says this already. Please don't sue us. I know reverse engineering is kind of a hot topic, so please just don't. What do we need for monitor mode? We need the management and control frames on the 802.11 layer, and we also need the promiscuous mode. So we don't want to not only get our frames, which are supposed to, that we get, we also want to get all other frames on the easel. So we basically want to move to get Wi-Fi hacking to the smartphone. I think it's far more convenient, even for cats. So there were also some other projects which enabled the monitor mode for a few older devices. For example, the DBC-Mon project enabled the monitor modus for the Nexus S, and we want to enable the monitor modus for the Nexus 5. So what do we have to do in order to enable the monitor modus? So the chip runs with basically two paths for the code. So it gets a ROM part and a RAM part. The RAM part is pretty easy to get. So you have a file on the Android file system, and you can just read it. And it gets loaded from with the driver onto the chip when the interface goes up. And you can use the same method basically to get the ROM part. So in the end, we got both parts, and we could start reverse engineering. So the next step was how did we find out how the frames were used in the firmware. So we have to find out the RX path. And we already knew from the BCMON project that the WLC BMake receive function is pretty essential. And if we got that function, we can basically directly send out the raw frames from the firmware to the driver. So in the end, we needed to patch two functions. The aforementioned WLC BMake receive function in order to send out our raw frames to get the management and control frames. And on the other hand, the WLC core init function to enable the promiscuous mode. Oh, I forgot. To patch these things, we could just patch the RAM file on the Android file system, and then it gets loaded onto the chip when the interface goes up. So in the end, we were able to write these patches in C. This is just a bare-bone example for the WLC BMake receive function, which we override. And you can see it's just a pretty small code, and yeah. So in the end, we were able to, for example, run aerodump from the aircraft suit on the Nexus 5. We needed a few tweaks for the driver in order to manage this. And for the future work, we plan to add injection support. This is what you need for the real fun stuff. We need to fix some radio tab header things, and we need to improve the stability. So if you want to know more, visit us on nexmon.org. We already pre-built a boot ROM. You can just use this to boot your Android device with it. And if you don't like it, you can just reboot. It will don't stay there. You can also read our technical report. You can also find it on the nexmon.org webpage. Or you can just talk to me here at the Congress or write us an email. So that's it. Thanks.
Wait a minute, please. Wait a minute. We still have lots of time. Would you like to answer some questions, maybe? No, he's gone already. Would you like to? I mean, we still have time due to the cancelled talk.
Is there a question?
Is there a question regarding Nexmon?
Okay. Okay.
No, the Happy Cat doesn't work, sadly.
I don't know.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, we still have like 8 minutes before the break. So, does anybody have a workshop he wants to introduce, or have some really spontaneous lightning talk without slides?
Or want to sing something, or some lyrics, maybe?
Okay, yeah, well, then maybe you can just go into the break. So, have fun and see you in 20 minutes. At 2 o'clock, we will return.
Cool. So we are still in the break, but we will use the break to give a short reminder to all our speakers. If you're a speaker, please come to the front row, take a seat in the front row. You can look up, if you're lucky, you can look up your speaker position in the wiki. And if you see that you are the next speaker, please already stand beside the podium, beside the speaker's desk, so we can switch very fast. And also a reminder to the speaker, you really have 5 minutes. We give you all those 5 minutes. You don't need to talk so fast that nobody can understand you. And just calm down, relax, nobody will kill you on stage, maybe afterwards, I don't know, but no, I don't think this will happen. So you have all the time in the world for your speak, you don't need to rush it, and just relax a bit. And one important thing, always talk to the microphone. If you stop talking to the microphone, if you go away from the microphone, no one will hear you. And so I think we will continue here in a minute with the next talk.
Yeah, I think we can actually start with a German talk, technische Aufklärung. We also have translation, so I'll just say it again, deck number 8014 for a German to English translation and English to German translation for all the talks. So please, if you need them, just call the number.
And I think these translations are really marvelous, so give a big round of applause to all our translators over there.
Okay, then let's go with technische Aufklärung.
Dann hallo und herzlich willkommen. Mein Name ist Felix Betzin und ich bin einer von 2 Podcastern vom Podcast Technische Aufklärung. Und der Vortrag geht heute über den Podcast und aus dem NSA-Untersuchungsausschuss, aber ich möchte gar nicht inhaltlich über den Ausschuss reden, das können andere viel besser, Anna Biselli, zum Beispiel gestern Saal 1 oder auch gestern bei uns in der Live-Show im Sendezentrum, sondern ich wollte eigentlich was erzählen, wie man dazu kommt, aus dem Bundestag jetzt einen Podcast zu starten, gerade als Nicht-Journalist und klick mich hier einfach mal durch. Wir alle kennen das Thema, Snowden-Enthüllung. Der Deutsche Bundestag ist das einzige weltweite Parlament, was gesagt hat, wir gucken mal unsere Geheimdienste an, was sie eigentlich wirklich machen. Also der einzige Ausschuss, den es da zu diesem Thema gibt. Und der ist öffentlich, da kann man rein. Und wir fanden das spannend, haben uns informiert und irgendwann denkt man so, okay, so viel Zeitung lesen und die ganzen Blogs und dann das Live-Protokoll von Netzpolitik.org, super Service, aber ich lese mir das dann abends irgendwie stundenlang auch nicht mehr durch. Ich war selber schon Podcaster und dachte mir, wir müssen hier was machen. Das ist ein Auszug von so einem Live-Protokoll, also da kann man sich dann durchquälen, wer es mag, und ich fühlte mich dann halt irgendwie nicht richtig informiert und auch die Zeitungsberichte von den einzelnen Medien. Die haben manchmal oft nur einen Teilaspekt, wo ich aber mich auch frage, wie war es denn heute? 3 Zeugen sollen da gewesen sein. Wie ist denn das vor Ort? Was war denn da für eine Stimmung? Und wenn man dann halt schon podcastet, dann sagt man sich halt, okay, cool, ich will einen neuen Podcast hören, mache ich es halt selbst. Okay, wie geht das? Wie kommt man dazu, aus dem Bundestag zu podcasten? Man meldet sich einfach an, das ist der Kalender für 2015, das so lila eingefärbte, das sind die Sitzungswochen, also der Bundestag tagt gar nicht jede Woche, sondern nur in Sitzungswochen, und immer in der Sitzungswoche am Donnerstag gibt es diesen Ausschuss. Meldet man sich vorher an, schreibt eine ganz einfache E-Mail, Name, Geburtsdatum, und dann ist man angemeldet, geht hin und kann dann da drin sitzen. Wir sind nicht im Reichstagsgebäude, sondern hier, das ist das Band des Bundes, rechts diese beiden Gebäude, und wir sind so ein bisschen links über dem Schiff, da ist so ein runder Saal. Da kommt jetzt eigentlich das nächste Bild.
Noch ein bisschen warten.
Ja, der Klicker. Klicke ich in die richtige Richtung? Ich muss doch zu dir. Ah ja, okay, genau. Also wir sitzen da oben, wo die Jalousien runter sind, da sitzen wir drin, da drunter ist die Kantine. Und so, Konzept und Format. Das überspringe ich mal ein bisschen, das sind Slides aus einem anderen Vortrag. Also ganz will der nicht so. Nee. Kannst du vielleicht weiterklicken einfach? Noch eins? Genau, also das ist jetzt das Ganze von drin. Hier vorne im Bild, wenn man die Leute kennt, mit dem hellen T-Shirt oder dem hellen Shirt im Rucksack, das ist Zeit Online. Links daneben die ARD, davor sitzt Golem. Und wir haben uns dann einfach gesagt, oh cool, setzen wir uns einfach so dazu mit unserem Podcast-Equipment. Das ist ein bisschen abgesperrt, dachten wir auch, wie geht denn das? Dann schicken die uns weg. Wir haben ja keine Presseausweise, wir haben ja nur so komische Besucherausweise, aber total entspannt. Da gibt es jetzt irgendwie keinen Zickenkrieg, weil wir jetzt keine echten Journalisten sind, da kann jeder mitmachen. Und dann haben wir halt angefangen, genau, hier uns damit hinzustellen. Ich stehe da so ein bisschen im Pult mit drinne, halte da mein kleines Zoom H1 in die Gegend und haben einfach angefangen, so Statements mitzuschneiden. Im Ausschuss selber drinnen kann man nicht mitschneiden, da ist Aufnahmeverbot, aber irgendwann gibt es halt diese Statements, schneide ich mit, und am Ende, ich weiß gar nicht, ob du klickst oder irgendwie, Zoom, ja, okay, super, danke, ruhig noch eins weiter. Und man kriegt dann auch halt, wenn man mal einfach nett fragt, auch direkte Interviews mit den Obleuten. Das ist der Konstantin von Notz von den Grünen, super aktives Mitglied da drin. Nächste Folie. Und ja, wenn man nämlich selber nicht der Mega-Spezialist ist, aber so ein tolles Format haben will, nimmt man sich einfach Leute, die Ahnung haben. Rechts sehen wir unseren ehemaligen mutmaßlichen Landesverräter André Meister, der halt den Ausschuss ab Tag 1 abdeckt. Ja, man schnappt sich die Leute, er schreibt drüber und bevor er seinen Bericht absetzen kann, ja, podcastet doch mit uns. Ne? Das ist Information hautnah und was er schafft, er kann das alles super einordnen, in den Kontext setzen, mit seinem Wissen, was er hat, das hatten wir auch nicht und am Ende kommt ein tolles Format raus und alles, was man gemacht hat, ist man hingegangen, öffentliche Sitzung, jeder kann es machen, redet mit den richtigen Leuten, die Ahnung haben und es kommt ein Podcast raus und ich freue mich, dass bestimmt auch viele Hörer da sind. Danke für eure Unterstützung. Ansonsten technischeaufklärung.de, abonniert den Podcast und vielleicht bis bald im Ausschuss. Danke.
Dankeschön. So let's continue with an English talk about coffee. Coffee. Can you let me just shortly try the clicker myself.
Yeah. Actually, could you trigger the slides for me?
Yeah, then let me just.
I will need to both hands.
Oh, you need both hands. So just say next slide and then.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I wanted to do this talk with 9 and Halfo, but sadly they couldn't be here because one of them spent too much time managing the log and has been ordered to sleep, and the other one has to be with his family right now. So I'm going to talk about this alone. Yeah, we want to infuse coffee because brewing coffee actually makes no sense if you think about it. Later on that, more on that. And we are using easy whipping siphon. It's actually a pretty simple tool you can buy for about 90 euros. And you need those N2O capsules to charge it and just a regular coffee filter. Next slide, please. Yeah, what you actually want to do is brew it cold and you want to pre-cool the container. So just put it in the fridge or in an ice box for about 5 to 15 minutes. Next slide, please. And yeah, then you need coffee beans, obviously, and you want really strong character and a lot of acidity because when you're brewing coffee this way, you will not get much bitters and you will get a lot of character. And so you can just experiment with very interesting, very strange coffees. Next slide, please. Yeah, I use like 60 to 75 grams per 800 milliliters of water. That's for a 1 liter siphon. And do it as fine as possible because you will get much more surface area and much more aroma, but filtration can get really, yeah, it can take a long time, up to 2 or 3 hours. So I settled for about a setting of 15 on our mill. Next slide, please. And yeah, then you just add water and just tilt like this because you don't want to put it on its head because the valve gets clogged up with the coffee powder. And we had that happen. You have to unscrew it, and then the coffee sprays everywhere and your whole kitchen is ruined. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then you charge it with 1 or 2. I usually use 2 capsules of N2O. And it's where you get 20 to 30 bars. You can overcharge it with 3. It's not recommended, but it worked fine, and you get different results. And yeah, then you want to mix the coffee and the water a bit so the gas can get everywhere. Next slide, please. And then you put it in the fridge for about 45 minutes and you wait. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then you depressurize, unscrew it, and then you filter the coffee. Yeah, next slide, please. This was a session of, I think, 3 hours, and we used 3 stages of filtering. And yeah, but this way you get the best results. Yeah, and then you can enjoy your coffee. Next slide, please. Yeah, if you short comparison between regular cold brew and pressure cold brew is much faster, and you get much better aroma, less bitters. Next slide, please. There is more. You can do more than coffee. like pressure-infused vanilla whipped cream. Just put vanilla in there and whipped cream, and it works really well. Next slide, please. Or use coffee to infuse whipped cream. And this stuff is highly addictive. I'm sitting on the couch just eating it, and I felt that I had an overdose of coffee, and I felt really bad, but it was so good I had to just eat more. It's really, really nice stuff. Next slide, please. Yeah, we thought maybe coffee and cacao would be a good idea. It turns out it's not. You either get the full coffee flavor and no cacao flavor, or the whole cacao flavor and almost no coffee flavor. And filtration is a pain in the ass because the cacao powder is really, really fine, and it clogs up all the filters. Next slide, please. Yeah, and because filtering is such a hassle, we thought about vacuum filtration, and that's probably the next step we will take. Just use a Büchner flask, a Büchner funnel, and a water pump to create a vacuum, and then maybe 3 to 5 stages of filtering. So this whole thing can get faster. Maybe we could actually give coffee to the next GPN in Karlsruhe. Thanks. Drink more coffee.
Thanks a lot. Next talk is going to be Primer.
Yes.
Primer, are you there?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, that's you. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
We got hacked with a speaker with a double identity.
Really?
So let's go. Slides, please.
Okay. So yeah, this is about a primer, a story-based hacking challenge I wrote for a friend. And the idea was just to make something that's not very complicated, it's just fun to do. And laid back, engaging, and I quickly landed on a story-driven approach. And it quickly turned out that's not only just fun, it's also a good way to get people into the scene and to make them curious about it. So yeah, the first thing I found out after 7 years of not writing anything web-based was that writing bad code has become a lot harder. I actually had to, I think, do an hour of research to manufacture a SQL query that's actually where you can actually perform an injection, because all the tutorials I found were pretty secure. And that was not the case when I started out. I tried to create an increasing difficulty curve. So this is just plain text JavaScript. That's pretty easy if you just look at the source code, but that was also the goal, just to get people to look at the source code and make them realize that you can actually understand a bit of it. And you don't need to understand everything, but you can get an idea of what's happening. Yeah, if you want to play it, there will be some spoilers. Whoops. What's happened? So this is basically the progression. It starts with an SQL injection and just a user agent check where you just have to change the string, a cookie check, then there's something hidden in the robots.txt, then there's a JavaScript login, an obfuscated JavaScript login, then you have to do some social engineering, decode and encode some messages, and do some hash cracking to get to the latest stage. And that's the last 3 stages are all based on a terminal that's emulated in a browser. And yeah, I've played a lot around with hints hidden in a CSS file and hidden in JavaScript, just to urge you to look at the source code. So if you only know how to use a browser, then this is already a nice step to get people into just looking at that stuff and make them curious. And even the obfuscated JavaScript, obviously you don't want to deobfuscate that stuff, it's just dirty. But you might find some hints in the source code if you just take a look. Yeah, and the basic approach is just to give you a small excerpt of the story, to lure you with the story, to make you interested in it, and then you have to solve a challenge to get to the next part. It's written in a classic cyberpunk style, like Neil Stephenson and William Gibson. There are some climaxes and cliffhangers, like suddenly you get presented with a terminal and you have to navigate around some servers and there are things happening and AI is running rampant. And yeah, it's all about the fun, right? I also wanted to try to teach something about ethics, that exploits aren't only fun, but if you do them in the real world, they might have consequences. And I think I failed at that part. I didn't manage to actually achieve that. So if you have some ideas how to achieve that and how to do it, please come and talk to me. I will be available on deck at CHSA, Couchsofa. And because I want to write a second part and maybe do something with hardware also with a friend. And yeah, you can find the primer at isgood/primer. And yeah, I want to thank Moby Dick, Einbar, Sarah mostly, and Nolex Beef, because they helped me a lot with this project. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. So the next talk is going to use a video. Let me see if I can handle this. I think we already hear something. We also see something.
Hi guys, thanks. I'd like to present to you a new instrument, a new musical instrument, and I want to invite you to play it. This instrument is a computer program that you can download for all major operating systems, and it comes pre-installed on Raspberry Pi, and it's designed for kids. It is called Sonic Pi, and Sonic Pi can be used by 10-year-olds after a first simple lesson in school, and then they can start to make music. And they can make music that is satisfying to them, that sounds, well, not quite like Daft Punk or Depeche Mode, but at least it's using the same technology behind it. And as we all know, pop music is repetitive. What it is using in the background is a secret to the kids. Because when you give it to the kids and tell them, this is how you can this is how you can make music with it, then you don't tell them that what they are using is a programming language. And while they are making music, what they are doing is learning how to program. And what they are doing is they are learning the basic concepts of computer science, and we aren't telling them in advance. They are having fun. What they are doing, they are learning things like data structures, arrays, synchronicity, all the basic concepts of computer science, and while they are playing with it, and we don't tell them that there's a right or a wrong solution to what they are doing, they can decide themselves if what they hear is okay or not, and if they can change it. And they can change it to whatever they like. And it's not like what I did in school, where we were taught how to write a sorting algorithm. And if the sorting algorithm was right, then it was the right solution. I can just decide what sounds cool and what does not sound cool. The thing is, this is so simple that kids in primary school can use it. But it's so complicated that grown-ups can have fun with it too. So I invite you to try this. I will also do this at the primary school of my daughter with kids in 3rd and 4th class. And I'm really looking forward to do that. I asked a teacher about it if he thinks that this is okay for small kids in primary school, because the language that they have to use is English. And he asked, what are the commands that they have to use? And I said, well, the major commands that they need to learn are play and sleep. And he said, well, those are the words that they learn in English in 1st class. And then I showed him, well, what you can do with Sonic Pi is you can teach the kids how to do pair programming. Because what you can do is you can give them an audio splitter. And the teacher told me, well, we know an audio splitter in the computer room of our school, and we call it the fun duplicator. Because they give it to kids, and then they put 2 kids in front of the computer, and then they can take turns while programming. Hey, I made a cool rhythm, now you make the rhythm, you make the melody. And these, now I'm out of words. Anyway, This is a very simple computer program. It runs on really shitty hardware. It comes pre-installed on Raspberry Pi. You can run it in any computer school, in any computer room of any school. And so I invite you to have fun with it. It runs on any computer. Just download and try it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
There's the clicker. All right.
Okay, we can start with robust IRC.
Can we have the slides, please? Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael. I'll be talking about robust RC or RC without net splits. Now, what's the motivation for doing anything in the IRC space at all? IRC is still very widely used among hackers and open source people, and every once in a while we looked around and evaluated alternatives, and none of them really convinced us. And then we thought, okay, what actually is the biggest problem that we have with IRC as it is? And we identified the lack of stability as the biggest problem. As you all know, if you have a TCP disconnect in an IRC network, what will happen is that the network will split. If you have a disconnect between you and the server, then you can't chat anymore. But if you have a disconnect between two servers inside the network, then entire portions of the network will be unable to talk to each other. And this puts a really strange incentive in place, because it means that you get rewarded for not doing software updates, for not doing restarts into a new kernel, for not doing anything to your computers, because that's the only way you can avoid net splits, right? So we thought that's not very satisfying, we want to do something about it. So we had two ideas. The first idea is that we use a tunnel protocol to gloss over the TCP disconnects. And the second idea is that we looked around and saw that there are highly available databases, so we used these as a model and then built an IRC network on top of a distributed library called Raft. So we have a distributed system that's using that library, and this is how it works. So you have a number of servers, and they make up one virtual IRC server. Typically, you run a network with like 3 servers or 5 servers, and at any given point in time, the minority of these servers can fail, and that's perfectly okay. The network will just continue to run. So in an example with like 3 servers, one of them can fail, but if you have 5 servers, 2 of them can fail at the same time, and nobody will even notice. In order to communicate with such a network, you would be using the robust session protocol, which is the tunnel protocol that I just mentioned. And to do that, we have a tiny program which is called the bridge, and it just tunnels IRC over the robust session protocol. How does it work? Every incoming IRC command that the network gets will be persisted using Raft, so it will be distributed across our network of servers, and once the majority of servers has acknowledged the message, it will be processed. The servers themselves are implemented as state machines. So that means that when they get the same input, they will generate the same output. So that means if a server of yours goes down, a client can just connect to a different server and say, hey, I was at this position in the stream, and just continue reading the stream seamlessly. So you will not see a disconnect. And it also means that if your IRC server process dies for some reason, because maybe you're doing a software upgrade or you're rebooting your machine or it crashes, whatever happens, as soon as you start it up, it will process the same input, it will generate the same output, it will be synchronized with all of the other servers. The fine print, what isn't so good, is the IRC latency, because it's determined by the median latency of all the servers, because they all need to acknowledge your messages. That typically is not a problem in practice, though, because the latency is so small that you can't perceive it anyway. If you want to have a really robust network, you will have to have access to at least 3 different failure domains. So that means you can't just put 3 robust IRC servers onto the same machine and expect it to be reliable. If that machine dies, then your whole network dies, right? So put them into different data centers, different providers, different machines, do it as differently as possible. And then last but not least, the throughput that we can achieve with robust IRC as it stands today is at about 1,000 messages per second, which is plenty okay for most of the IRC networks, but it would not be high enough to replace the biggest IRC networks that are out there. In order to connect to a network, if you're using Debian, Arch Linux, or any of the other popular distributions, you can just install the robust IRC bridge and then go ahead. If you are not using one of these distributions, you can just install Go, you run that commands on the slide to download the code of the bridge, start the bridge, and then connect with your favorite IRC client. You can also use a hosted version of the bridge that we run at an address called legacyrc. And then the network name. That obviously isn't as good because if your connection to that bridge dies, you're still host, right? So we urge you to run your own bridges. That's the end of the lightning talk, but at robustirc.net you can read much more about it. We have an extensive administrator's guide if you want to set up your own network, and there's also a 40-minute tech talk if you want to learn more. Also, I'm still at this conference for the rest of the conference, so please talk to me if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next talk is going to be Nordlicht. You can go ahead.
Yep. So, hi everyone, I'm Linwy, and here's the basic idea.
Oh yeah, that's one of those 9.7 MB PDFs.
Lots of large pictures, so, okay. So you take frames from a video at regular intervals, scale them to a width of 1 pixel and append them. And what you get is a picture which gives you an idea of the color development of the video over time. So here are some more examples. So at the top, for Finding Nemo, for example, you see scenes which are in open water, right? In the middle, there's the jellyfish scene, which is pink. If you know The Lion King, at the end, there's this fire scene, right? So you can see that, and there are also scenes with sky at the top, where the upper half is blue. And Titanic, yeah, starts with light colors, ends with a lot of dark water. So, and in all of these, you can see, oops, oh my. In all of these, you can see the title and the credits. And you can also see hidden scenes after the credits, for example. And it's possible to recognize different scenes of the movie. So my hypothesis is that you can use this to speed up your navigation of a video. Or put differently, why do we use this if we could have this, right? So I implemented this at the shared C library called Nordlicht, which is the German word for Aurora Borealis. This is the minimal usage example. You would specify your video and you decide size and pixels. You generate it. You can also access the raw buffer while it's generating, and then you write it to a PNG and you're done. Based on this library, there is a command line tool which you can use, where you can also specify width and also some multiple styles. So the first one is the horizontal style, the default, but you can also do a vertical style where you don't compress your frames to columns, but to rows, and then rotate them and append them. And there's some experimental style called spectrogram, which gives you a spectrogram of the audio track. I did some integrations into Video Player, which are highly experimental. So I have integration for VLZ, which you just saw, and integration for MPV, which is based on MPlayer. Yeah, that's the VLZ one. This is how it should look at the end. It's not really usable yet. And I'm also working on a YouTube integration in the form of a Grease Monkey script, which injects the Nordlicht into the HTML5 player on the YouTube website. So some ideas for the future, you could embed these codes into video containers, so the user doesn't have to generate it himself. You could deliver it as a subtitle track, maybe, I don't know. Nordlicht as a service is what the YouTube integration already uses, so you can request YouTube video ID plus PNG from some API, and you get the Nordlicht as a result. And you could also think of a JavaScript integration, so the user generates it themselves in their browsers. You can help by creating packages for your favorite Linux distributions. There are already Arch Linux packages and the start of a Debian package. And you can also integrate these into your favorite video player. Yep, here's the homepage, here's the source code, and that's it. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay. Next talk. Where did we lose? That's you. Okay.
Which button?
The clicker has been exchanged.
Okay.
People can talk.
So, like it or not, everybody who grew up in what we call the West, that's the US, Western Europe, we have been touched by the light of this flame, so to speak. You could call it the American dream, you could call it a lot of things, but it's basically this belief that freedom and justice and equality are not just quaint, fashionable social appendages like jewelry that wealthy states can afford to have, but that they are actually basic foundations upon which all the economic progress is based. And what's important about this is to know that this is not a universally accepted fact. In China and Singapore, for example, this is not part of the political philosophy. But what happened in recent years? It seems like every day the things that we were raised to believe in have begun to come under attack, either by the terrorists from abroad or politicians who were originally sworn to defend them. And if you look around you, there aren't any, in my opinion, there aren't any really serious progressive movements anymore. There's mostly just conservatives arguing against ultra-conservatives. And when I looked at the Muslim terrorists, and you know that actually only 20% of them were raised as Muslim. And I look at the mass shooters, especially in the United States, the white terrorists, and they're in the news almost every day now. And I look at the people who are backing the likes of Donald Trump, and I see a common thread here. Each of these groups has its own very different political memes, but beneath it all, what I see is hopelessness and I think a desire to die. Campaign rhetoric tells you almost nothing about what a politician will actually do, but it tells you everything about the psychology of a nation. And in the rhetoric of Donald Trump, it's very interesting because it's not something that should seriously inspire anyone. There really isn't any New Deal. It's not even a New Deal that I dislike. It's just that there isn't any New Deal. He's offering nothing. What is there, and what I think no Trump follower wants to admit, is I think that the psychology of a violent suicidal, this sort of belief that the world is broken and the only way out is to go out with a bang. 13 years ago, I lived in Western Massachusetts, and I used to walk through the woods to visit my neighbors. And in the woods somewhere, there was a clearing, and there was this old shack and some memorabilia strewn around it. And the locals used to call it the hippie camp. And that camp represented something. It represented the dream, the equality, the liberation, the living together, off the grid, without the state. Turn on, tune in, drop out, do as you like. Of course it failed, but damn it, they dared to try. Now, I want you to have a dream. This is the best picture I could have for a dream. Now, you don't have to live it, but just try writing it. Just try to imagine what the world ought to be like. And try to describe the big things, like how we would decide on law, and how we would prevent crime, and how we would make the economy work. But also, I want you to describe the little things, how the children grow up, and what people do for fun, and how men and women ought to interact, and what are people's hopes and their fears. But most importantly, I want you to think about optimum inequality. Inequality is something that almost nobody thinks about rationally. Communists say that everyone ought to have the same wealth no matter how much they contribute to society. And capitalists outdo them by apparently caring none at all for the level of equality as long as this thing called the market has made that decision. Now, when you give up on ideologies, and I want you to give up on these ideologies, I want you to describe what a humane world would look like. And if you can describe what it should look like in terms of how much inequality, then I think that we can work backward and figure out how we're going to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. short announcement between the talks. So the room is getting pretty crowded back there. So we have to play our favorite game again. Everybody, especially on the left side, please, just move closer towards the middle of the room so that the people who have to stand right now can get a seat at the edges of the rows. There are also 3 seats in front of me here right now. So if you stand back there, just come up here. Here are at least 9, 10, 12 seats, people. 12 seats. Come over here. There's lots of free space. We also still have a minute before the next talk comes on, so take the chance to get a seat somewhere.
Even the people who just came in, here are some seats over there, just in front.
Lots of room here. Also at the edge, so you can just jump up if you want. Yeah, nice. Good work. Very good. You're great. So next talk. It's called Cider CI. I don't know if it has something to do with alcohol. Will you see?
So, hi, I'm going to talk to you about Cider CI, a open source free software system to running integration tests, and especially multi-service integration tests. That's really a goal of mine, to inspire you all to think about the products you produce and how well they are tested. I think the world is greatly under-tested because it's very, very hard to set up tests where you have more than one software which you have to install, run, and then test against each other. The problem with traditional CI systems is that they think in terms of a single build or a single script. Maybe they give you some hooks around that script to run before or after, but inside that script you're on your own. It's very hard to make that even work, to set it up and manage this complexity, and also very hard to make it faster by parallelizing it. Cider CI is a system which also has a kind of explicit and complex configuration, but it has declarative dependencies. It has very little assumptions about your workflow. It doesn't even think about you running a test. Maybe it's something else. It's just scripts. That makes it very hackable. It also means that simple cases are relatively verbose, but we're not interested in simple cases. Quick overview, we have projects which have one Git repository, only Git is supported. Every repository has all the configuration inside for one or more jobs. Jobs, in turn, have one or more tasks. This distinction is because the task can run in parallel. They're not dependent on each other. And in turn, one task has one or more or less shell scripts that run in order. And the scripts depend on each other. That's how this order is specified. Graphical overview, here's the URL for much more detailed slides if you're interested. So this is an example of the integration. I update my Git branch called staging, then we run the test. If it's run, then we deploy to staging server. This is how this configuration would look in YAML. You can also write it in JSON if you're interested. The point is that it's always next to your code, so it will fit into your existing setup of code review or auditing or whatever you want. It's very integrated with Git. That's also the reason why only Git is supported. It knows about the branch and the commits and also the tree ID. That's the hash of just the content. So we can find when something broke. This is how a job looks with all the tasks. They run in parallel. Task actually runs as a trial because things always can go wrong. This is not about unit tests. They should be deterministic, but integration tests are much more flaky. Then inside one trial, we run all the scripts in the order like specified. And we also can generate a graph, which this is a very, very simple web application. For more complex cases, this graph just shows you that you don't want to manage this state in your head or in some shell script. So to summarize, it's very good at doing things fast. If some small thing goes wrong, then retry just this one thing. Also, it's very good at managing lots of different jobs, and most importantly, it's very flexible because it's all free software and not as a service. Some people run in one instance for their whole organization, some run one instance per project. We reuse our existing computing infrastructure, other people just run it on Amazon in the cloud on demand. We don't do any access management because we just trust the repository. We don't do any secrets management because you have your own machines running it anyhow. This is one more example of how you could set up things. This is just one graph where it gets more complicated. This is CyberCI running itself and testing itself, just one little feature. There are more features you would expect from a CI, and also good support for Git submodules if you use them. And if you're interested about it, I set up some instance here to play around at the conference, and you can contact me if you want to try something out. I'm especially interested in testing hardware, like for example 5-phone routers, because that's something you can do with your own infrastructure. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is going to be art on your screen. Special message for the video people. This talk is going to use a 16:9 ratio. Because I forgot earlier on. So, have fun. Okay, so yeah, we can just exchange your slides, no problem. So the talk is actually not called Art on Your Screen, but Apps als Kunstwerke. It's going to be a German talk. There's been some confusion because the speaker also has a talk tomorrow, and we mixed that up. As Nick Farr would say, the fail never ends. Okay, also weiter geht's mit Apps als Kunstwerke, deutscher Talk, English translation on AT14.
Ja, so, also mein Name ist Obelix und, oder auch Christian, für die, die mich nicht als Obelix kennen. Und ich möchte euch eine etwas neuere Kunstform vorstellen, nämlich Apps als Kunstwerke. Da muss man sich zuerst die Frage stellen, kann eine App denn Kunst sein? Ich meine, die meisten kennen vermutlich Kunst in Form von Gemälde oder Skulpturen oder wie auch immer Zeichnungen, vielleicht auch Performance-Kunst. Aber es gibt ja auch neue Plattformen jetzt unter dem Mobile und es gibt ja eigentlich keinen Grund, warum man auch auf Mobile-Geräten, auf Smartphones, auf Tablets oder sogar vielleicht auch Wearables, also so wie eine Smartwatch, auch Kunst machen könnte. Und da möchte ich ein kleines Projekt vorstellen, beziehungsweise die Erfahrungen, die wir da gemacht haben im ZKM Karlsruhe, das ist ein großes Museum. Und da haben wir ein Projekt, das nennt sich App Art Award. Da prämieren wir jedes Jahr Kunst-Apps, dazu später mehr, aber jetzt wollte ich mal kurz vorstellen, was für Erfahrungen wir da gemacht haben. So, wir haben jedes Jahr immer Kategorien ausgeschrieben. Es gibt natürlich auch, wie bei der klassischen Gemälde, gibt es verschiedene Techniken, wie man malt. Bei Skulpturen gibt es Bildhauer oder man kann Gemälde natürlich auch in Kupfer schlagen. Gibt es ja verschiedene Techniken, um ein Bild zu zeigen. Und genauso gibt es auch verschiedene Kategorien, wie man Kunst auf einem Mobilgerät darstellen kann oder wie man Kunst erstellen kann. Das ist zum Ersten, das ist nur ein paar von vielen Kategorien. Es gibt Soundart, da geht es halt darum, das Tablet kann Sound abspielen. Wie kann man da zum Beispiel die Bewegungen mit einfügen? Kann man da den Touchscreen mit einfügen, um so ein bisschen quasi schöne Effekte zu erzeugen und die künstlerisch ausschöpfen? Zum Weiteren, genau, das Tablet hat man natürlich immer überall dabei. Es haben alle überall ein Tablet dabei. Vermutlich habt ihr auch alle eins oder ein Smartphone. Da stellt sich natürlich die Frage, kann man Kunst zusammen machen? In dem Beispiel zum Beispiel Radwände hieß die App und da geht es darum, dass einfach in der Stadt aufgezeichnet wird, wo die Fahrradfahrer entlang fahren und das wird dann in einem Museum mit einem großen Stiftplotter auf der Wand mit Kreide aufgemalt. Es gibt auch noch viele andere, zum Beispiel zusammen musizieren, die Apps reden miteinander, spielen Töne ab, dann kommen Töne aus dem ganzen Publikum. Das ist eigentlich ganz nett. Das ist auch eine der möglichen Kunstformen und natürlich auch Game Art. Das gibt es auch schon, Computerspiele gewissermaßen können auch schon Kunst sein. Das streckt sich natürlich auch weiter auf die Tablets. Natürlich auch verknüpft mit dem Touchscreen, mit der Bewegung, mit der Mobilität, die man dort hat. Ja, so. Wie präsentiert man denn eine App im Museum? Hängt man die in die Wand oder wie sieht das aus? Wir haben hier so mal ein Bild gezeigt. Wir in Karlsruhe haben da so Sockel entwickelt, wo die Benutzer einfach diese Apps anfassen können. Die Tablets liegen auch rum, wenn man sie bewegen möchte. Also falls ihr noch nicht mal gesehen habt, wie man Apps ausstellt, so sieht das ungefähr aus. Des Weiteren nochmal zum App Art Award ein paar Facts. Wir hatten 2015 120 Einreichungen. Die Preise sind gut dotiert, also wenn ihr da einen Preis gewinnt, dann könnt ihr mit dem Geld auch ganz viele coole Projekte machen. Ja, und zu den sonstigen Sachen, also die meisten Sachen sind halt irgendwie iOS, die eingereicht werden. Android gibt es immer mehr und also da spiegelt sich auch so ein bisschen ein Trend um, dass doch immer mehr Android kommt. Der App Art Award ist auch auf Reisen, im Goethe-Institut in verschiedenen Ländern wird es ausgestellt. Und jedes Jahr gibt es von ZGM immer eine thematische Ausstellung mit mehreren Einreichungen. Also wenn ihr mal in Karlsruhe vorbeikommt, könnt ihr auf jeden Fall vorbeischauen. Genau, das ist noch ein Bild zu der Preisverleihung. Da werden dann die Apps auch einmal im Jahr vorgestellt und feierlich quasi verliehen. Ja, und das war es auch schon. Vielleicht, wenn jemand eine kurze Frage hat, kann er sie noch stellen. Wenn nicht, wäre ich hiermit fertig. Ihr könnt mich natürlich gerne auch ansprechen. Ich bin bei der 3D-Druck-Assembly oder ihr habt hier alle Kontaktdaten bzw. die Links, falls ihr noch mehr Informationen zu dem Projekt haben wollt.
Okay, danke. Ja, es geht weiter mit 16:9. So the next talk it's called Emergence of Computerized Healthcare Surveillance Systems. Okay. Go ahead.
Hello, willkommen. I promised some of you vegan candies, but I was ticketed by the German police for not having a proper subway pass, so fuck the police. Okay. So I'm just gonna kind of roll these slides along. Please kind of look at them. I'm interested in collaborating with you and having this be interactive, and also maybe drawing your attention to important ideas that we could all work on. So I'm from the medical field. I give chemotherapy, okay? So there are a lot of different ways that our medical system is vulnerable. There's a lot of information that can be gleaned from our medical records, a lot of stuff that we wish to keep private, whether we're women or people suffering with disease like HIV and whatnot. Even embarrassing herpes, you know, it happens. So, but more and more, because I really still consider this emerging, we're not having a lot of bioethical discussions about medical devices and their vulnerabilities and what that could mean for us. So a lot of medical devices will have some information such as the following: height, weight, sometimes it's just the drug, sometimes it's more patient data, sometimes medical devices will be connected to physicians. So we have to think about ways that people could be hacked potentially. And right now, some of the leading companies that are making medical devices are like Hospira and General Electric, things you'd think would be a little bit more progressive. But recently in September, there was an article written and it just said like a group of hackers was, black hat hackers, was put together in a room and they were really floored because all the devices in the hospital were able to be hacked. So there's like a fine balance. We want the device to work. We want, you know, your average nurse to be able to program the device, right? We want the patient to be able to circumnavigate when it's beeping, what's going on. We want, if the patient becomes unconscious, we want the patient to be able to, you know, when they can't communicate, we want the rescuers to be able to figure out maybe what's going on with the device. But we don't want malicious people attacking, right? But as of now, there is the potential for malicious attacks. So it's a fine balance. A lot of the devices will go back to like default passwords, things that you and I could not with very much difficulty surmise. So my talk is just about done. I thank you, but I hope to work with you in the future on making these devices more secure. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So the last talk for today.
Do I have a clicker? Hello. So everyone took my punchline, but yeah. This actually went, do I start? Yeah. This went viral amongst my friends, and I kind of want to use it as a metaphor for the futility of profiling on the war on terror. And it's, you know, the usual kind of quiz image format. You have like a picture of a beard, and you have to guess, you know, is it a Muslim, hipster, or Jew? In this case, it's a good Muslim boy. Another one, you know, ooh, can we tell, can we tell? It's actually an Orthodox Jew. And in this one, can anyone want to hazard a guess? Maybe through the process of elimination? Probably a hipster. Well, actually, yes, according to the website. Oops, sorry. And it's Action Bronson, you know, rapper. If some of you guys might know him, it's actually, he's all three. Because his father is Albanian, and you know, like a religious Muslim Albanian. His mom is Jewish, and, you know, he's a dirty hipster like the rest of us.
Sorry, please talk into the mic. You can see your slide. You can see your slides down on the monitor.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry about that. Now I know. And actually, the thing is about profiling is that it's so complicated of a thing that there is some sort of truth to it, but it's so complicated that from visual cues alone, you can't tell that much. For instance, this person, some people would assume that he comes from Saudi Arabia or like somewhere in the Gulf, like the part of the world I'm from, but actually he's from Africa. Born and raised in Zimbabwe. So and these are kind of African religious figures, but his origins are actually from South Asia. So you'd expect maybe he'd look like a South Asian Muslim. But instead, he looks like that, which, you know, he wants to look like the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia because he is the Grand Mufti of Zimbabwe. And these things are, in a sense, have to do with the power and prestige that these nations exercise on religious thought. And the reason for that is very contingent on history. These are the guys who actually fought Lawrence of Arabia. And because they control the two holy shrines of Mecca and Medina. So in many ways, people have posited that like the Saudi state is kind of a model for the Islamic state. And it's so complicated and the history is convoluted, but it has to do with figures like bin Laden, who truly was a revolutionary figure in the visual culture of Islam. And particularly in the 90s, when he rebelled against the Saudi state, he started donning the turban and wearing the camouflage of the Afghan warrior. Catch my breath. Yeah, and if we want to say the difference sort of for gamers within a gamer's language of the difference between Al-Qaeda and ISIS, Al-Qaeda used, in a sense, modded versions of modern warfare, of Call of Duty. ISIS is more Grand Theft Auto. And there is a lot of truth to this. So this is Jihadi John. one of the main speakers of for ISIS, especially in English. And he was born as a stateless person in Kuwait and grew up in England. And the reason, the cell was called the terrorist cell he was a part of, they noticed they had these thick British accents, so they called them the Beatles. And hence he's John Lennon of the Beatles. And he has this college registration, just like a dorky kid, like anyone else. And this is his documentation from Kuwait, so he kind of traverses both worlds. And this is his colleague, as it were, in terror, Jihadi George, as in, from the, and he was a failed rapper, actually, called El Jinni before he joined ISIS. So the connections to rap run deep. I think the more important visual cues, I really went through a lot of slides. The really more important visual cues isn't necessarily the Islamic ones, in my opinion. It has to do with the war on terror as a whole. And here you have the ISIS execution video with people wearing, obviously, the Gitmo jumpsuits. And this is, in a sense, the thing that reverberates actually more than, whether they trim their mustache, the length of their beard, how scraggly their beard are. Because like, our life stories, facial hair is complicated. But things like this, in a sense, shows you that the production values and the level of detail, this is actually shows you how they're actually CGI'd screened. And it makes us wonder in the current surveillance system that how do they move all this gear? How do they get to a point where they can set that up when anyone like me can get stopped and harassed for hours in the airport just because I look scraggly? Okay, thank you everyone for your time, and I hope people heard me. Thanks.
Thank you. We are right on time, so this concludes today's, thanks a lot. Yeah, very nice. This concludes today's lightning talk session.